We're still working through technical difficulties. So I will start the witty banter, and hopefully by the end of this stupid story, I didn't intend for these to be stalling tactics, but they work. Yeah, we're trying to give everyone a seizure. So imagine if you got to see our lovely river or the beautiful lake, what it was like in 1900. It did not look like that. The river was in fact essentially an open sewer, and the lake was where the sewer went to. It was also where we got our drinking water from. So Chicago had a major typhoid problem in the 1900s, and we did sort of the obvious thing that you do when you have a typhoid problem. You convince people to stop putting their pee and poo in the river. No, we didn't do that. It's too much work. Instead, through perseverance, dynamite, and shovels, we just made the river go in the opposite direction into the Mississippi instead of into the lake. A feat of engineering, I think, that has been unmatched. In fact, it won like engineering feat of the millennium by some group that gives that out. There's a fantastic story about the final days of this. St. Louis, which is downriver from us on the Mississippi, towards the end of this project realized where all of Chicago's poop was going to go if we made the river run backwards to St. Louis. And they said, oh shit. And so they sued, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled in their favor. But by the time the decision got to the people who were desperately trying to break through the last 10 feet of this, it was too late. We'd already made the river run backwards. And so, what do? You can't make a river run backwards twice. So that was the end of it. Anyway, the moral of the story is sometimes you set things into motion, like the promises a core team makes to its users about particular features coming out. Sorry. Or you can start a conference on time and not have AV issues. Sometimes your mouth's writing checks that your skills can't cash. Anyway, in a moment, Dave Wasmer is going to be giving us an update on how our community has been doing so far with the promises we've made to ourselves in 2018. In the meantime,
if we can figure out the AV,
I'll just start my security. What's a fun thing we can do while we're waiting here? I'm pardon. Well, we could sing. I don't have. Unfortunately, my singing voice is about as good as my embouchure for trumpet. Oh, the Chicago anecdote I skipped earlier was actually, I could not think of one that goes with Torrent's speech. So, all right, so to peel back the curtains, I actually don't know what anyone's talk is about. I've just been making them up and hoping like I come close enough. And for Torrent's talk, I was like, I don't know what that's going to be about. And so I was racking my brain. Actually, the hard part of the Chicago anecdotes is not finding them. It's like culling down the interesting ones, because the city has done some ridiculous things. So, for example, I don't know if you know, but in 1871, the entire city burned to the ground. This happened in Seattle too. Theirs was caused by an earthquake. Ours was caused by a cow. Acts of nature, you can't control them. And like Seattle, we decided that because our ground was at essentially water level, which is also a huge sanitation issue, we could just raise the whole city up 10 feet. And Seattle did this, and they told, I'm finishing the story in a minute. What? They told everyone building a building, build 2 storefronts, one on the first floor and one on the second floor, and eventually we'll get the sidewalk and street up to meet you at the second floor, and then we'll just stop using the first floor. Chicagoans would not go for this. They were not going to spend the money to build 2 first floors, so instead we did the sensible thing. We just jacked up every building 10 feet when we were ready to have the road meted and put in a new foundation, as you do. Issue. We could just, raise the whole city up 10 feet. And Seattle did this, and they told, I'm finishing the story in a minute. What? They told everyone building a building, build 2 storefronts, one on the first floor and one on the second floor, and eventually we'll get the sidewalk and street up to meet you at the second floor, and then we'll just stop using the first floor. Chicagoans would not go for this. They were not going to spend the money to build 2 first floors, so instead we did the sensible thing. We just jacked up every building 10 feet when we were ready to have the road meted and put in a new foundation, as you do. You ready? All right, a free bonus anecdote. Everyone please give Dave a welcoming warm round of applause.